So what if the very trait that you always brag about in job interviews, the one you secretly think makes you a top performer, is actually, statistically speaking, making you worse at your job?
Oh, and actively destroying your mental health at the same time.
Right. I mean, you know the exact moment I'm talking about. The interviewer leans across the desk, they kind of steep their fingers, and they drop that ultimate trap question.
The classic, what is your biggest weakness question.
Exactly. And without even missing a beat, you give that standard, totally cliche answer. You say, well, I guess I'm just a bit of a perfectionist.
Yeah, we wear it as a badge of honor, don't we? Like it's a humble brag.
It really is. You're essentially telling them that your biggest flaw is just caring too much and working too hard.
Right, because we live in this society that just aggressively rewards the appearance of flawlessness. We want the interviewer to hear, relentless high achiever, while we mask what is essentially a really profound psychological vulnerability.
Well, today's deep dive is going to completely dismantle that myth. We are unpacking a genuinely fascinating book today. It's called The Perfectiontrap by Thomas Curran.
Yeah, he's a fantastic psychological researcher.
He really is. So we've pulled together his research along with some clinical studies and meta-analyses to show you why this favorite flaw of ours is actually a trap. It's burning you out. And to really grasp the scale of this illusion, you kind of have to picture the Queen's Terminal at Heathrow Airport.
Oh, that's such a great visual from the book.
Right. Curran paints this incredibly vivid picture. It's this massive, beautiful architectural marvel. And as you walk through it, you are just bombarded by this perfectly curated lifestyle branding.
Just massive, glowing billboards everywhere.
Yeah, impeccably groomed businessmen catching rides, grinning businesswomen strolling effortlessly with their luxury luggage. I mean, it is this holographic simulation of a flawless, stress-free existence.
But then you have to contrast those glowing billboards with the actual people walking beneath.
Exactly, the real passengers.
Yeah, the real people in the terminal are, dragging their heavy bags, sweating through their shirts, totally stressing out because their flight is delayed by 3 hours.
Their coffee spilled on them.
Right. And they have this 2-kilometer sprint to the departure gate. There is just this massive, really tangible disconnect between the cultural hologram we are fed and our messy, exhausting reality.
And we look at that billboard and we internalize a very dangerous message, don't we?
We do. We think, if I just worked harder, if I optimized my morning routine better, if I was just a bit more perfect, I could be that relaxed traveler. We totally mistake this immense cultural pressure for personal drive.
So the mission of this deep dive today is to explore why perfectionism is not actually the secret to success, and how understanding the cognitive mechanisms behind it can honestly provide massive relief if you're feeling crushed by all this pressure.
Yeah, and to understand why that cultural hologram is so dangerous, we kind of have to entirely redefine what perfectionism actually is.
Yeah.
Because we tend to conflate it with just having really high standards.
We really do. And the author shares this wonderful story to illustrate the difference. It's about his grandfather, who was affectionately known as Papy.
Oh, the Carpenter story. I love this one.
It's so good. So Papy was a master carpenter. He would take this rough, reclaimed timber and just spend hours delicately carving it, measuring, sanding it into this absolutely flawless woodwork.
Yeah.
His standards were astronomically high.
But the key is what happened after he finished.
Exactly. When Papy finished a piece, he'd just drop it off at its new home and walk away. He didn't hang around waiting for a 5-star review. He didn't, take photos for endless validation on social media.
Right, he's just a quiet pride in the craft itself.
Right. His high standards were about the work, which means, clinically speaking anyway, Papy was not a perfectionist.
No. Not at all. And that distinction right there is the cornerstone of a major clinical breakthrough.
Yeah.
It was made by these psychologists, Paul Hewitt and Gordon Flett.
Okay, let's unpack their work, because this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, so they realized that perfectionism isn't actually about perfecting things, it's about perfecting ourselves. Or, well, more accurately, it's attempting to hide our inherently flawed selves from the rest of the world.
Wow, so it's a hiding mechanism.
Exactly. Hewitt and Flett discovered that true perfectionism is rooted in this psychological mechanism they call deficit thinking.
Deficit thinking, meaning you feel like you're operating from a deficit.
Yes. It is this deep, shame-based fear that you, exactly as you are simply not enough. So the meticulous behavior, the endless checking, the overworking, it's not driven by the joy of the craft like Papy.
It's a defensive shield.
Right. It's deployed to prevent social judgment and exposure.
Which totally shifts how you have to look at your own daily behavior, right? I mean, think about when you're sitting at your desk, meticulously rewriting an email for the 5th time before hitting send.
Or endlessly tweaking the fonts on a slide deck. We've all been there.
Right. But that isn't about making the work better. The cognitive reality is that you are deploying a defense mechanism to ensure no one in the office thinks you're incompetent. You are managing your anxiety, not managing your output.
Spot on. And because this behavior is fundamentally rooted in how we relate to other people and our absolute terror of their judgment, it manifests in different ways depending on the person.
Yeah, Hewitt and Flett developed this multidimensional model to explain this, right?
Yeah, they did. Instead of thinking of perfectionism as just a single trait, it's much more accurate to think of it like a pressurized plumbing system.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So the internal deficit, that deep feeling of inadequacy, is a highly pressurized tank of anxiety. And that pressure has to escape somewhere, right? So there are 3 distinct valves it can vent through.
Got it. So the first valve vents inward. This is what they call self-oriented perfectionism, which is basically the internal compulsion to be flawless.
Right. You set impossible, constantly moving standards for yourself.
And then ruthlessly criticize yourself when you inevitably fail to meet them. The book highlights the Olympic cyclist Victoria Pendleton for this.
Oh yeah, her story is intense.
She won multiple world championships, she won Olympic gold, and yet in interviews, she expressed feeling just entirely unsatisfied. She was incredibly self-critical and in constant psychological agony.
Because the success didn't cure the deficit. The mechanism of self-oriented perfectionism just moves the finish line.
Right. You win gold and immediately your brain tells you, well, I could have ridden smoother or I didn't break the world record by enough of a margin.
Exactly. Now, the second valve vents outward, but based on perception. This is socially prescribed perfectionism.
Okay, so how is that different from the first one?
Well, this isn't just your own internal standards. It is the crushing, internalized belief that others demand perfection from you. Demi Lovato is a prime example of this mechanism in action.
Right, the pop star.
Yeah, they have spoken really openly about the immense pressure to be everything to everyone at all times, to look right, sound right, be thin, talented, and universally beloved.
It creates this sort of psychological panopticon.
Yes. You live under the illusion of being under constant, critical, hostile surveillance from the world around you.
Okay, but wait, I'm struggling to reconcile this model with some of the most famous perfectionists in history.
What do you mean?
Well, if perfectionists are driven by a fear of exposure and this deficit mindset, wouldn't that make them inherently meek or defensive? We see incredibly dominant, fiercely aggressive people exhibiting intense perfectionism.
Right, people who don't seem insecure at all on the outside.
Exactly. How does a shame-based deficit mindset explain someone like Steve Jobs?
That paradox is exactly what the third valve explains. This is other-oriented perfectionism.
Ah, okay, so it goes outward.
Right. Instead of turning the pressure inward on yourself, you project your own impossible standards onto everybody else. You evaluate the people around you with ruthless hostility for their imperfections.
And that explains Steve Jobs perfectly.
It really does. His fragile self-esteem, that internal deficit, was simply too painful to turn inward. So it manifested outwardly as pure aggression. He would scream at subordinates, call people's life's work disgusting.
There's that famous story in the book, right, where he agonized over buying the quote-unquote perfect washing machine for his family?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes. He debated the trade-offs of different washing machines every single night at the dinner table for 2 weeks.
The sheer cognitive load of debating a washing machine for 2 weeks is just staggering. And what is terrifying is that these 3 valves in the pressure system aren't mutually exclusive, are they?
Not at all. That's the scariest part.
Yeah.
A person can suffer from all 3 simultaneously.
Wow. So you can be tearing yourself apart internally, terrified that the world is judging your every move, while simultaneously lashing out at your coworkers for not meeting your impossible bar?
Exactly. And because perfectionists tie their entire identity and self-worth to these impossible standards, the psychological fallout when things inevitably go wrong is just catastrophic.
But society gives us a very different script here, though. I mean, we have this whole modern obsession with hustle culture.
Oh, totally. Rise and grind.
Yeah, you see it on bumper stickers, gym walls, LinkedIn posts, the whole Nietzsche, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger mentality. We are constantly sold the idea that this relentless striving builds grit. People just assume perfectionists are uniquely tough because they demand so much of themselves.
But the clinical research just shatters that myth completely.
Right.
Perfectionism does not create grit. It creates what researchers actually term anti-resilience.
Anti-resilience, because grit actually requires flexibility, right?
Exactly. Grit involves cognitive flexibility. A healthy brain encounters a failure, processes the disappointment, and then uses self-compassion as a psychological shock absorber to bounce back and try again.
But perfectionism strips you of those shock absorbers.
It completely removes them.
Yeah.
Because your entire worth is tied to being flawless, a failure isn't just a mistake, it is an existential threat. Your brain becomes cognitively rigid. When a stressor hits, a perfectionist doesn't bounce back. They shatter.
Honestly, the most jarring part of this book for me wasn't even the clinical data. It was the author's own breaking point, which perfectly illustrates this anti-resilience.
Yeah, when he talks about his girlfriend, Emily.
Right. When he was younger, his girlfriend at the time, Emily, confessed that she had been cheating on him. Now, heartbreak is a profoundly painful, completely normal human experience. But for a perfectionist, that normal pain doesn't process normally, does it?
No, it doesn't. His deficit mindset immediately kicked in. The internal narrative wasn't just sadness over the breakup, it was, she cheated because I'm not enough. My hidden flaws caused this. I am defective.
It's heartbreaking, and instead of giving himself the grace to grieve or process the betrayal, he just forced the pressure valve shut.
He tried to maintain his flawless facade. He went to work the next day, pretending everything was fine, completely burying the trauma just to keep up appearances.
But you can't cheat the body's nervous system like that. Because he didn't allow himself a release valve, the psychological pressure cooker just built up until it caused a total system failure.
Yeah, the physical symptoms he describes are terrifying.
Months later, sitting at his desk at work, his body just revolted. He started seeing visual white flashes in his eyes. His heart rate spiked uncontrollably. He couldn't pull air into his lungs. He suffered a massive panic attack, stumbled out into the street, and literally had to call emergency services.
That physical collapse is the ultimate endpoint of anti-resilience. When bad things happen, like layoffs, breakups, a major mistake at work, if you are caught in this trap, you simply do not give yourself grace.
You slap a flawless smile on it.
Yeah, and you force yourself to keep producing until your physiology literally forces you to stop.
So if perfectionism is this destructive to our mental and physical health, the cultural assumption is that the trade-off must at least be worth it professionally.
Right, the whole I suffer but I get the results argument.
Exactly. We assume the panic attacks and the stress guarantee high performance and success. That is the whole foundational logic of using it as an interview answer. We get the corner office and the massive salary.
But the data reveals a shocking success paradox. Meta-analyses pooling data from tens of thousands of students and workers across various fields showed that perfectionism has virtually zero correlation with better job performance.
Wait, zero correlation?
Zero.
Okay, let's translate what that actually means in the real world. If you take a perfectionist and a non-perfectionist with the exact same baseline skills, the perfectionist will work 20 extra hours a week, suffer a panic attack, alienate their team, and deliver the exact same quality of work as the person who went home at 5 p.m.
That's what the data says.
How is that even possible? How can someone who works an 80-hour week obsessing over every microscopic detail not produce a better result?
It comes down to the cognitive mechanism of diminishing returns. This is a concept heavily researched by Patrick Gaudreau. When your brain is in a state of threat, which is what the fear of failure creates, your prefrontal cortex actually restricts lateral thinking and creativity.
So you get tunnel vision.
Exactly. You become hyper-focused on minute, totally irrelevant details.
The book uses this really brilliant agricultural analogy for this. Think of a farmer fertilizing a crop. A little bit of fertilizer provides the nutrients a seedling needs to grow, but a perfectionist farmer operates on the anxiety-driven logic that more is always better.
Right, so they just keep dumping it on.
They keep dumping fertilizer on the plant to guarantee it's the best plant ever grown.
Yeah.
And eventually, the chemical load becomes toxic. The crop withers and dies. You literally poison your own work with effort.
It's so true.
The cognitive load maxes out, and you are just obsessing over the metaphorical whipped cream until you overwork it and it turns into butter.
But it's not just the poison of overworking. The research shows perfectionism actually causes us to avoid the work altogether, which feels completely counterintuitive.
Oh, the avoidance trap.
Yeah. A researcher named Andy Hill demonstrated this in a really fascinating experiment with cyclists. He had a group of athletes complete a grueling time trial. And regardless of their actual performance, he manipulated the results and told every single cyclist they failed miserably. He told them they came in dead last.
Wow. just a massive targeted blow to the ego to see how they respond to failure.
Exactly the point. Then, he asked them to do a second time trial. The cyclists who scored low on perfectionism absorbed the failure. They maintained or even increased their physical effort on the second try.
But the highly perfectionistic cyclists...
Their effort just fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
The data show they simply stopped trying, they completely self-handicapped.
Because the cognitive logic of a perfectionist is a defense mechanism. If you don't try, you can't officially fail.
Right.
If you don't put in the effort, any poor result can be blamed on a lack of trying rather than a fundamental lack of ability. And in the modern workplace, this avoidance trap manifests directly as procrastination.
Oh, 100%.
Think about your own habits for a second. Have you ever stared at a massive, incredibly important project, felt a sudden spike of dread in your chest, and then spent 2 hours endlessly scrolling social media, answering low-priority emails, or rearranging your desk?
All the time.
We beat ourselves up thinking we just have a terrible time management issue. We buy planners and we download productivity apps. But what the clinical research proves is that procrastination is an anxiety management issue.
Yes. You are intentionally delaying the completion of the work to delay the agonizing judgment of that work.
Which perfectly explains the zero correlation with success. Perfectionists are trapped in this pendulum swing. They are either burning themselves out, overworking the whipped cream into butter, or they are aggressively procrastinating to shield their fragile ego from potential failure.
Exactly. So they never actually hit that productive sweet spot.
So why is the cultural myth that perfectionism equals success still so dominant?
Survivor bias, plain and simple. We look at the absolute peak performers, the Lance Armstrongs, the Steve Jobs, the billionaire founders, and we see their intense perfectionism. We mistakenly assume the perfectionism was the engine of their success.
When really it was probably despite it.
Exactly. What we don't see are the thousands and thousands of people with the exact same level of debilitating perfectionism who burned out in the shadows, ended up hospitalized with stress, or who never took a creative risk in their lives because they were too paralyzed by the fear of failure to even begin.
This is so heavy. If perfectionism destroys our resilience, leads to panic attacks, and doesn't even make us more successful, why does it feel like this mindset is spreading like wildfire? I mean, it feels like everyone is struggling with burnout and impossible standards today.
It isn't just a feeling. It is statistically proven, and the sheer scale of the data is honestly alarming. Thomas Curran and Andy Hill conducted a massive longitudinal study. They analyzed data from 40,000 college students between 1989 and 2016.
40,000, that's a huge sample size.
It is, and the results paint the picture of a hidden public health crisis.
Yeah.
While self-oriented perfectionism has risen steadily, socially prescribed perfectionism, that soul-crushing, a panopticon belief that everyone else expects you to be flawless, has accelerated exponentially.
Yeah.
It saw a staggering 40% relative increase over that time period.
A 40% spike across a single generation is massive. What is the root cause here? We always hear about tiger parents pushing their kids too hard, or the whole participation trophy generation debate. Are our parents to blame, or is this somehow baked into our DNA?
Well, genetics do play a baseline role. Studies suggest about 30 to 40% of perfectionistic traits are heritable. But genetics don't shift 40% in a single generation.
Right, evolution doesn't work that fast.
Exactly. To explain a spike of that magnitude, you have to look entirely outside the home. The book highlights the vindication of Judith Harris. She was a researcher who was actually kicked out of her PhD program at Harvard because her ideas threatened the psychological establishment.
Wait, kicked out?
Yeah. But she went on to definitively prove that parents matter much less to a child's psychological development than their peer groups, their environment, and the broader macro culture they grow up in.
So the culture is the true culprit.
Yes. Psychoanalyst Karen Horney coined a brilliant term for this mechanism. She called it the tyranny of the shoulds.
The tyranny of the shoulds. That phrase hits so close to home because it perfectly describes the daily cognitive load we all carry.
We live under these relentless, aggressive cultural directives.
Yes. From the moment you wake up and check your phone, the culture dictates that you should be fitter, you should be earning a passive income, you should be optimizing your REM sleep with a wearable device, you should be perfectly curating your aesthetic on Instagram, you should be crushing your side hustle.
It never ends. And the sheer volume of these directives creates a vast, unbridgeable gap between our actual, messy, flawed reality and the idealized, perfect self society demands we present to the world.
And then we try to bridge that impossible gap with perfectionistic behavior, which only exhausts us and isolates us further.
Right, and this cultural conditioning penetrates every single socioeconomic level. It is not just an affliction of elite college students or tech CEOs.
Right, it's everywhere. And the author shares a profoundly moving story about his mother that grounds this whole theory in reality.
Well, the cleaning story.
Yeah. She was this brilliant woman who spent her life working grueling hours cleaning construction sites for minimum wage. And she would scrub those dirty, dusty sites with this furious, punishing exactitude, just working her body to the bone to make a construction site spotless.
Which is an impossible task.
Right. And it wasn't about the joy of cleaning. She had deeply internalized the impossible, demanding standards of a patriarchal, class-based society that inherently devalued her. The macro culture constantly broadcasted the message that she wasn't enough, that her class status made her lesser.
So she took that societal deficit, turned it inward, and literally scrubbed floors until her hands bled, trying to forcefully prove her worth to a system that was designed to exploit her.
It is the tragedy of internalizing a systemic societal failure as a personal deficit.
It really is. And we've traced this entire psychological architecture today. We started by redefining perfectionism away from the noble pursuit of high standards, exposing it as a shame-based defense mechanism.
Right.
We looked at how it vents inward through self-criticism, outward through projection, and absorbs the crushing surveillance of society. We dismantled the myth of grit, showing how it actually creates fragile anti-resilience.
And we explored the success paradox, showing how the fear of failure biologically stifles creativity and drives us to procrastinate.
Exactly.
So if we connect all of this research to the bigger picture, it becomes jarringly clear why this trap is so pervasive and why that 40% spike is happening. Our modern economic and social systems literally run on our discontent.
They absolutely do.
The algorithms, the advertising industries, the corporate ladders, they all fundamentally need you to feel like you aren't quite enough. Because if you feel like you aren't enough, you will keep buying the new optimization product. You will keep striving for the next promotion to prove your worth. You will keep feeding the machine even as you burn your own psychological and physical health to the ground.
It's a self-sustaining cycle.
Exactly. Therefore, accepting yourself, making the active choice to embrace your inherently flawed, beautifully messy, perfectly average humanity isn't just some trendy wellness hack. In a culture that profits off your inadequacy, choosing to believe that you are already good enough is actually the ultimate act of societal rebellion.
It completely flips the script.
It does. So the next time you find yourself sitting in a job interview, tempted to offer up your favorite flaw, or the next time you catch yourself tweaking an internal email for the 10th time out of fear, or walking beneath those glowing billboards at the airport stop,
Just take a breath.
look at the flawless, relaxed people they are selling you. Remember the clinical data. It is a holographic simulation. It is not real. The pressure you feel isn't a lack of personal drive. It is a cultural trap designed to keep you endlessly striving on a treadmill that has no off switch. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As you close this out and step back into the messy reality of your day, try to do something truly radical. Give your wonderfully imperfect self a little bit of grace.